there's this big debate going on right now about trying to rename the Persian Gulf Arabic Gulf or Gulf of Arabia. There's also a lot of people who don't understand the issue. They think this is just about a name. It's not about a name, and it's not about an ethnic issue like Persians against Arabs or anything like that. It's not about nationalism. It is a little bit. I want to talk about the details behind it so people really understand what the issue is, why we're so freaking outraged about this, and rightfully outraged about it. You know, it's not just like Persian pride or something like that. It's really a deeper issue connected to everything that's wrong with this world right now, connecting back to US policies actually, and connecting back to the biggest powers of propaganda that we have right now, which are two. One, the Muslim Brotherhood through Qatar, and two, the Islamic regime that is occupying Iran. So these two powers have a lot to do with what we're witnessing right now and why people refuse to bow to the demands of jihadists to rename the Persian Gulf Arabic Gulf. So first of all, we have to understand that there is a pattern in the Middle East of renaming areas that have been claimed and changed and occupied and seized by colonizers with the name of the indigenous people. So we can see it all over the globe. Everybody knows that Zimbabwe has been reclaimed from the colonizers, the British colonizers who called it Rhodesia, and has been reclaimed from them. Now this is Zimbabwe. Sri Lanka, the same thing, was reclaimed from the colonizer name, the Portuguese and British named it Ceylon, and it's now Sri Lanka again. Same with Burma, named by the British colonists, is now called Myanmar. So there is a trend globally going back and pushing away the narrative from the colonizers, from the people that came to destroy a country, to change it, to oppress the people, to the people that were actually there and want to reclaim their land and their identity and their history, and they're fighting back. You have all noticed in the last almost century, but especially in the last 2 years, what is going on in Israel, right? That's another colonizer story told the wrong way, right? Like the colonizers are not the colonizers, they're actually the victims, and the victims are actually the colonizers. It's exactly the same thing with Israel. The Romans renamed the land of Canaan, which was Israeli kingdoms, Palestine, and then again, just decades ago, it was used, the colonial name was used to erase the historic claims and the identity of a people that have been back to their homeland, right? Like this is the ultimate decolonization and liberation story of building Israel in their ancient homeland and reclaiming their names and reclaiming their identity and their history and their roots to and their culture to the land, versus the colonizers that have been pushing to rename it by the name of the enemies and then claim it by the newer colonizers, Arab Islamists. So this is not unique to the Persian Gulf or the Persians or the Iranians or any single ethnicity. The issue with the biggest colonizing force starting 1,400 years ago, but very strong since the 1960s, the strongest force that we've ever seen and the most successful actually in what they're doing in claiming land, changing cultures, erasing history, erasing identity, fighting names, fighting celebrations, culture, languages, ethnicities, like all of that kind of stuff, is coming from one source, and that is the source of Pan-Arab Islamists. So it's very important though to understand when we're saying Pan-Arab Islamists, we're not saying all Arabs. This is not like a ticket for everybody to hate on Arabs, okay? We have actually Arabs inside of Iran being part of the Iranian nation. Most of the now sovereign and more progressive Arab countries with Arab leadership hate these Pan-Arabist Islamists. They went with them for some time, but then they saw that they're actually turning against them. So you have like Saudi Arabia or Jordan, where the Islamists, the jihadists, try to topple the kingdoms and take it over. So they're fighting them back. They can't always do it publicly. They can't always be out there in their face because they're afraid of them, because they're very powerful still in those nations. But we've all seen like Saudi Arabian leadership, what they think about Qatar, right? Like everybody remembers this video here.
The Qataris, since the mid-90s, have been sponsoring radicals. They have been inciting people. They have become a base for the leadership for the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to keep in mind, is what begot us Takfir and Hijrah, which begot us Al-Qaeda, which begot us Al-Nusra. The Qataris allow their senior religious clerics to go on television and justify suicide bombings. That's not acceptable. The Qataris harbor and shelter terrorists. That's not acceptable. And Nashri, the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in 2000, entered Saudi Arabia on a Qatari passport. We captured Al-Qaeda types coming into Saudi Arabia with Qatari passports. The Qataris know this. The Americans know this. The world knows this. The Qataris are funding dissidents in the Emirates and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait in order to cause problems for those governments and to create instability. Why would you do this? The Qataris pay ransom to terrorist groups, including $500 million to Hezbollah in Iraq, $50 million to Qasem Soleimani, according to text messages between the Qatari ambassador in Iraq and the foreign minister of Iraq, including I don't know how much to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Is that acceptable? The Qataris use their media platforms to spread hate. The Qataris send weapons to Al-Qaeda affiliated militias in Libya. The Qatari Emir was conniving with Gaddafi on how to overthrow Saudi Arabia. The Qataris connected Gaddafi with a Saudi dissident in London who they fund, who connected the Libyans with a group in Mecca with the objective of assassinating the then Crown Prince, later King of Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? We have phone conversation that the Libyans gave us after they overthrew Gaddafi, where the then Emir of Qatar is telling Gaddafi how he's recruiting princes and tribal leaders and military officers and members of the royal family to cause mischief and destabilize Saudi Arabia, and predicted that within 10 years there would be no royal family in Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? They do the same thing in Bahrain and in Kuwait and in the Emirates. There's a list of terror financiers that the US puts out, the UN puts out, and a number of them are living openly in Qatar, raising money and giving it to bad people. Is this acceptable? Shouldn't be. Why do the Qataris get away with it? Because I think people see a young country, young leadership, they buy fancy buildings, they have a nice airline, and they think, wow, these guys are really modern. But we have to deal with the dark side that I just explained. We just vehemently oppose their behavior, which is very dangerous to us and has endangered our citizens and has endangered our security.
They're calling them terrorist supporters, but it's not specifically just about terrorism. It's about that identity, that group of Arab Islamists that went completely rogue and used some time in history to invade half of the world. I mean, they went from India to the whole Middle East, up to Europe, claimed Spain. They were going into France. So this was something huge, and it was pushed back. And we're still pushing back. So this is the same story. And these people, whether they're Arab or they're not Arab, know exactly about them and know the dangers that are coming from them. So that's the point about, like, this is not an ethnic issue, like we hate Arabs. No, absolutely not. The first people that were suffering under the Islamists were Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula, were like Bedouins and whatnot, and they were slaughtered like every other civilization and people and culture and empires and kingdoms that they took over. We're not putting a blanket check about like, oh, we're Persians, we hate Arabs, or they're Arabs, they hate Persians. It's not about that. It is about colonization. It is about the political ideology and the war machine, not just physical war, but like propaganda war machine that is trying to change history, that's trying to erase cultures, erase history. Why? Because they're afraid of the truth. We have cultures and peoples and identities that defend the truth, defend what is real, defend what is good. And we have the opposite forces that are built on lies, that are built on changing history, that are built on propaganda, on manipulation, on the fact that they don't want you to think on your own. They want you to follow. They don't want you to be individuals questioning, distancing yourself from your opinion so you can objectively question yourself and your values and your beliefs, but to just be cheerleaders for a cause. Whatever side you're on. Are you on this side? Are you on that side? Like a basketball team, right? Like, which team are you on? And they don't want you to think critically, because when you are able to think critically, You seek truth. And when you seek truth, they have no power over you to manipulate you and to push for their agenda, which is only to enrich and empower themselves. So that's what we're fighting, is defenders of truth versus those that want to hide the truth, that want to build their empires and their power on lies and want to destroy us. They see us as enemies because we're able to show what the facts are. And once you show what the facts are, propaganda doesn't work anymore. Propaganda is very powerful, but when you have the facts, when you can look things up on your own, propaganda can't do anything to you. It loses its power. It's only a weapon when you cannot think. What's very important to me, I don't want people to be cheerleaders or to repeat what I say. I want people who can criticize, who can question, who can dig deeper, who can ask why are they doing that, who's doing that, and all of those important questions, and not stop until they find the truth. So that brings me pretty much to the next part. The next part is just facts, okay? What do we know? We know, and we're going back to the Persian Gulf versus Arabian Gulf. The real name Persian Gulf, where is it coming from? So we have at least 2,500 years of maps, of history, of empires, of kingdoms, of treaties with allies, but also with enemies. So when even the enemies of the Persian Empire called this sea Persian Gulf, that means everybody agreed to the terminology. So there is not one map, there is not one historian, there is not one ally, and there is not one enemy that would call it anything else up until the 1960s, just about, 60 years ago. So going back there, it started off with the empire, and I don't know how to pronounce that right, because English is my third language. So we say in Persian, Hachameneshi. So Cyrus the Great's empire. This body of water, the sea, has been called the Persian Gulf, always, uninterrupted. It was always surrounded by the same people, by the indigenous people, never changed. It doesn't matter if on that coast now new states have been formed. It's the same people, more Arabs, didn't have that many Arabs there before, that was after the invasion. That's what we had for not just centuries, for millennia. That's what was taught in schools. That's what every map says. That's what everybody understood and still understands. That's why there's so much outrage. And they go, who says that? Who says it's anything else? And why would you call it anything else? So it's recognized today by the UN, by everybody. Everybody recognizes that. The term Arabian Gulf was never used until the 1960s, until again, a group of Pan-Arab Islamists started this as a propaganda tool, as a propaganda term to continue to Arabize and control and have more influence on the region, because that's what it gives you, influence on the region. It is very important what we call that body of water because of the history of it. So let me explain a little bit. Like many people say, like, okay, why aren't you guys outraged about the notion that we're calling the Mexican Gulf now American Gulf? And I'm not here to defend that. Yeah, it's not a great idea either. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't have much of an opinion about it. It's a completely different ball game. Calling it American Gulf, first of all, it's not the Gulf of the United States. It's America, and we call the whole continents America, North America, South America. So second, calling it American Gulf does not come with a propaganda package to erase Mexico, to erase Mexican identity, history, power, its people, its faith, its culture, and all of that kind of stuff. It's not a move to erase a people. And that's the difference, okay? If it is, again, like I can be wrong, like everybody else, correct me, tell me like where this is the move, and this has been like a 50-year campaign to erase Mexico, and I believe you. But again, nothing will change in Mexico. Mexico said, like, to us it's going to be the Mexican Gulf, and the US said to us it's going to be the American. Like, nothing is going to change in these countries. No power shifts. Nothing happens to the people. Nobody's going to be oppressed more or less than before when we change that name. It's very different in the Persian Gulf. And to understand why this is different, you have to understand who is pushing for this. So it wasn't Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, one day waking up and thinking, you know what, that body of water on the other side of the earth, I want to rename it after another people, not my people, not Americans, not the Persians, not Iranians, not anybody, but Arabs. Like, he didn't just like wake up and thought of that, right? And he said that when he was challenged, right? Like, first the news came out and everybody was like outraged. Then there was a reporter asking him, And here's what he answered.
When you start referring to the Persian Gulf as the Arabian Gulf, are you going to make that announcement on your
They're going to ask me about that when I get there, and I'll have to make a decision.
So you haven't made a decision yet?
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't know if feelings are going to be hurt. Why have a case right over here? It's called Gulf of America. And I guess a lot of people get ideas from us. But the Gulf of America was something I thought should have been named a long time ago. I'm going to be given a briefing on that. It was just done. And I'll make a decision.
So we're seeing that he's clearly saying, like, okay, I see there's people who get ideas from us. So what is he saying? He's referring to people. See here, what he's telling us is it's not my idea. People get ideas, right? Who are these people that are getting ideas and are pushing it to him? Well, where is he going? He's going to the Middle East. And who is there? Who could be pushing for this? So 2 countries come to mind, right? Most people think, oh, Saudi Arabia. If it's going to be called the Arabian Gulf, the Arabs, Saudi Arabia, must be the ones pushing for this. I don't think so. The Saudis are, again, not the same as the Qataris, not the same as the Pan-Arab Islamists. They have pushed, in fact, against them, right? They see them as enemies. They see them as a threat. So they probably don't mind calling it that, but they're not the ones that would use their power to push for this, okay? It's probably like whatever beneath them or something. Like they don't care. They have Saudi Arabia. It's huge, right? Like what else do they need? What they need? But there's a little tiny, ugly, malignant mole that is called Qatar, and that is the hub of these Pan-Arabist Islamists and their propaganda tool. And this is where all of the push is coming from. The Qataris, just like the Islamic regime, are 2 of the most powerful influencers of Arab Islamists. They're trying to control narrative, and we've seen it in the news over and over, at least since October 7, but we knew it from before. But since October 7, it's crystal clear how many millions and billions they're pushing into education in America. Why are they doing that? Because they're so worried about our education. They want to give us the best chances? No, they're pushing exactly in the fields of political science, history, Middle Eastern studies, like all of those things that they want to twist the history, push propaganda, hide the truth about what happened, about who is the oppressor, who is the oppressed, what are they doing, what is their intentions, what are jihadists, what are Islamists, how are they different from other people, what is their aim. So everything that we see right now on our college campuses, our own students being brainwashed over decades by millions and billions of dollars going into education system, that is the result of that. And they've not been hiding it. They're doing it in plain sight. We have article over article, reporter after reporter, explaining what is going on in the United States, the infiltration by jihadists, by foreign forces of our children. Why is that so important? They are our future, right? So these children that are right now on these college campuses, these are the people that are going to go into politics. These are the people that are going to go into media. These are going to be our future judges. These are going to be our future congressmen, our future Pentagon, our national security advisors. And they're being brainwashed in our elite universities because jihadists have a long history, 1,400 years, of understanding how to defeat their enemies. And they understood a millennium ago, they were able to come with swords. That's why they all have like their swords on their flags, you know, all of these jihadist militias. They understood they could use brute force in history, but not anymore. And not just Western nations. Any free nation of the modern world, you cannot destroy them from the outside with force. You can, but it takes a lot of force, and they're very strong. They will fight back, so it's a suicide mission. What you have to do is infiltrate them and crumble them from within. That's what actually brings them down. And that's why they have invested year after year after year after year into media, into propaganda, into universities and everything. And that's why people were so happy when President Trump came out and said, okay, we're going to take out the Department of Education, which was massively infiltrated, right? Like everything taken out. We're putting it back into the states, but unfortunately that doesn't solve the problem because the states are also infiltrated. We don't even have the manpower to have professors to teach the truth. We don't have that. Every professor that was on the right path their resume, their work, everything has been dismantled. They have done campaign after campaign after campaign against these professors, taking them out, kicking them out, taking their funds away, and they have over decades brought in their own professors. We have people from the Islamic regime who are criminals, who are terrorists, who are involved in assassination plots, teaching at Princeton, still, right now, our students. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, you know? These are just the ones that are like so freaking obvious that they're in the news and being like pushed back by everybody because it's so outrageous. But beneath those levels are 50 other layers of these professors going and whispering day after day and training the minds of our youth to be working against their own interests. So you see now why I said this topic is bigger than that. This topic of wanting to rename is not just about a name. It exposes the real propaganda, the real power of jihadists over us. And we will go, and I'm going to make a video about Qatar and about what has happened, I want to say since, most obviously since March, I would say, March or February, March this year, to our administration, and how it seemingly made a 180-degree turn on their strong policies. Like they came in with the strongest policies against foreign influence, against Qatar, against Hamas, against the Islamic regime. Like they came in with all the weapons that they needed. And within 2 months, we're in May now, it seems like they've completely turned on that. So we have to talk about that. And if you guys like it, let me know in the comments, because then I'm going to make a video, like the next video, specifically about that, and I'm going to pick some examples to show you where you can exactly see what is happening and why it's happening and in whose hands this is and what we can do about it. But that's another topic, so let's come back to this now. So I want to talk about like some points that are very important to point out, I think, when you're looking at tweets or posts or something about this Persian Gulf versus bullshit Gulf, like whatever they want to call it. When you don't have arguments or truth on your side, you just make up shit. That's the disinformation, that's the propaganda that they do. So what you see, most of these people that are saying like, no, it shouldn't be the Persian Gulf, they're making claims that are just laughable, but I think we have to point them out. So some people think or claim that geography is a popularity contest, right? Let's see how many people are there around that region, and that's how we determine what we will call it. Or let's count how many countries are there, and that's what we're gonna call it. Yeah, that's not how history works. That's not how anything works. If that was true, we would take the Indian Ocean, right? Look at the Indian Ocean on the map, like how it's made out, right? There's India on the top. But most of the coast to the Indian Ocean, Arab countries, Africa, like there is no campaign to say we're gonna rename the Indian Ocean African Ocean or Arab Ocean or whatever. Yeah, there's not, because it's bullshit. It doesn't matter how the geography and the population changes, if it changes, and it hasn't changed that much around the Persian Gulf. It's still the biggest coast is the Iranian coast, and Persians are one of the Iranian people. Nothing has changed there. It's just funny because they make this, they make pictures and they put like the names of Arab nations next to it and say like so many Arab nations, and that's why it's called. So that's not how naming works. That's not how history works. That's not how any of this has ever worked. And it's just playing on people's naivety to pretend that. Look at the Mediterranean. France at some point was occupying most of North Africa, French colonies, right? They didn't come out and say, okay, now it's all French colonies and France on the top. We're gonna rename the Mediterranean the French Ocean or whatever. Nobody does that because we know how history works. Names are part of legacies. They're part of history. They're part of identity. They're part of culture. They're part of treaties, of agreements, of powers, of like all of that kind of stuff. It's not a head count of who lives there now. If we did that, every year we have to rename all of the bodies around the world because people move, nations move, identities grow, change, populations change. We don't go around and rename mountains and cliffs and blah, 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 just randomly because the population changed. So if anybody wants to sell you that, this is a bullshit excuse by people who have no truth on their side, and they want to play with your mind to make you think they have a point. But it doesn't hold up in international law. It doesn't hold up in history. It doesn't hold up on maps. It doesn't hold up anywhere in the world, ever. Another thing that was like super interesting to me, and I found that out before this whole thing with Trump was happening, right? Before he said he's going to go to the Middle East and to Qatar and blah, 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 and the UAE and whatnot, and then make this decision. I had actually somebody point out to me that Google Maps was now placing the word or the term Arabian Gulf in parentheses on all of their maps under Persian Gulf. And they used to do that, again, this whole thing started, the campaign started in the 1960s by the Pan-Arabists. It was pushed back and forth and blah, 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 and we were fighting it back then. We still had a country called Iran, which is now occupied by the same Pan-Arab Islamists called the Islamic regime. But that's another story, because I still see people calling these Pan-Arabist Islamists Iranian or Iran or the Iranian regime. So again, I think we talked about that, but if you guys want a video specific about that with all of the facts, so people finally understand that this is an occupation, I will make this video anyways, but I just want to see, like, if you want that next, I will make that next, because it's bothering the shit out of me and of everybody else who understands the truth. You know, being called, like, your enemy is being called by your name, it just pisses you off in a different way. What I was saying is that exactly. So Google used to do that. Like, sometimes they would put that in parentheses there, but apparently somebody told me that now permanently it appears in parentheses next to the word, next to the real name, Persian Gulf. So I made a little tweet saying what I just told you, like 2 facts or so, like blah, 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 this and that, and put it out, and I got like around 4,000 likes. And for big accounts, this is like, man, whatever, nothing, right? But my account, everybody knows I'm severely shadow banned, right? I don't break through the shadows ever, because they don't want people like me to speak or have any kind of following or be heard. So that's why mainstream media is canceling me. On social media, we're heavily shadow banned. And all of a sudden, I had so many people liking this, like what I thought, like back then 2 weeks ago, just telling Google to shut it. It was such a basic tweet. Like, why would anybody like that? Why is it going so big for my account and for what I'm used to? It was an outlier. So I was scratching my head for weeks, and I was asking like AI and everything, like, what is different about it? Like, why are people seeing this and liking this? I even had people from the Islamic regime. I mean, like, you know, coming on my account with their Islamic regime flag and their like Soleimani pictures and tributes and saying, Giselle, I usually hate what you say, but you are so right about this. And I was like, get the fuck out of my account and block them. But still, like, I couldn't understand, like, what is going on here. So apart from these outliers of Islamic regime people, there was a big base that was bothered by this. And that's where I think it finally clicked in me that this issue, this patriotism, this thing that people sometimes say is bad, nationalism, national pride, it's Persian pride, blah, blah, meow, this, that, Persians versus others, and da-da-da-da-da. It's always put negative. I'm like inherently from like how I've been raised in Germany, which is the least patriotic country after the shit show that we had with Hitler. Coming to America, again, like very liberal schools. I'm in California and all of that kind of stuff. So I was brought up by the system, not by my family. Like, my father is the most like nationalist and patriotic person that you can imagine. But like by the environment that really teaches and molds you, I was brought up to be not nationalist. You know, like hippie kind of, like, oh, we don't need borders and we don't need nations, and kumbaya kind of person, right? Which always clashed with a patriotic nature, pride and an identity, and teaching history and teaching what Iranian means, and like, you know, strategic and all of the kind of stuff from my father's side. So it always clashed. It was never like, oh, okay, that's what he says. Huh? It was a back and forth. And I was a person never wearing a flag or never owning a flag. Nobody's flag, not Germans, not Americans, not Iranian, not the revolutionary flag, the Afshakaviani, until they took my dad, and I was like taking these things. I still didn't know why exactly. I mean, I had my reasons, other reasons than what I'm going to tell you right now. But it took me a minute to understand the power of patriotism, the power of national identity, of culture, of a people, of history, of truth. It was a weapon, and it's seen as a weapon by the Islamists. That's why they call you like nationalist, fascist, racist, or blah, blah, blah. If you have anything patriotic in you, They try to shit on you because they know it's a weapon. Because these people who are patriotic and defend their identity and know who they are and know who the people are who want to destroy them, they are immune to foreign influence. They are robust enough to break it, to teach others, to bring them on their side. So what I discovered was a weapon with so many soldiers. There's an entire army out there of Iranians. And again, it's not just Iranians, you know, it's the entire Middle East that has been oppressed by the Pan-Arabist Islamists, by the jihadists, let's just call them jihadists, which are Phoenicians, Egyptians, you know, like Syriacs, Syrians, whatever, Jews, Hebrews, all of the Iranian peoples, and so many more. Like we can continue. We know who the indigenous people are, what they stood for, and who's oppressing them. And every single time when they used their patriotism, their identity, and their pride, it was a punch in the face of these oppressors. So that's why I have now the flags with me, and I'm carrying them, because I can appreciate in this fight that we're in. And that's how I see what we're doing. We're in war. We're not here to blah, 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 and educate people, and we want an awakening, and we want to win a freaking war. And that war only is won when these oppressors are gone. So in this war, we need weapons, and we have different weapons. So I'm getting really excited every time I discover for myself, like, damn, this is a weapon. Now I understand why they're using it. Now I understand why my father was teaching it, why the people of Iran were teaching him. And then he used his portal, his satellite TV and radio to teach the masses back. And that's why he was so dangerous to the Islamic regime. Once you awaken that, and we can see that in this new generation, like you can see masses of people going to the grave for the memorial of Cyrus the Great. Masses of people are celebrating Nowruz. Masses of people are chanting, you know, like, or putting the Iranian flag on their arm. Remember the people who put it on their arm and their arm was burnt, you know, like Majid Rahnavard and patriots, you know, like, or the people in Izeh. These are patriots, and that's the weapon that they use, this patriotism that makes you immune to this bullshit of trying to pull you away from what you are and what you stand for, and the truth that you protect and carry and give on through stories and values to the next generation. They're picking up on that. People are singing the national anthem of Iran, not the whatever song these mullahs made up. It has nothing to do with Iran whatsoever. They're holding up our flags, not the Islamic regime flag. So you can see this huge power, and it's the same with the Zionists in Israel. Like, again, they want to say Zionism is bad, it's that. It's a nationalist movement. People going back to their ancestral homeland. Nobody is forbidden to do that. Nobody says Spanish people can't go back to Spain, or French can't go back to France if they lived somewhere else. Yes, they can. So it's only a problem when it's the problem that the oppressors have. They were trying to erase these people. They were trying to oppress them, erase them, kick them out, murder them, genocide their asses. And now you have this nationalist movement coming back and saying, no, you're not. You're not taking our name. You're not taking our land. You're not erasing our identity. We are here to stay, and we're building on that. And that is a weapon that I see in every single one of these people all throughout the Middle East. So that's why we have people identifying, like we have people who are non-Iranians, and they're outraged. They're Israelis or Jews or like anything, and they're like, no, you're not. You're not changing that name, because they understand the purpose behind it. They understand what they're trying to do with this propaganda, that this is a tool of money, of oppression, of billions of dollars, of lobby groups, of education being smashed and taken away and replaced by propaganda. So that's the truth that they're trying to bury. And it's funny when you see that even many who claim to be Iranians, and I don't think like culturally or by identity or by the way they're acting, they're really Iranians. Like they can be probably born in Iran and raised speaking Persian or something. And that's a difference, right? Like you can be there and be completely brainwashed. Like it mesmerizes me when I'm thinking, like it really like makes me laugh when I'm watching, for example, what Patrick is saying. First, let's say he's a very intelligent person, right? Like when one person in his podcast said like, who's Donald Trump to change the name of like a water, right? And he's like, what do you mean, who is he? Like, yeah, legally he can't do that. But this position of the President of the United States is the most powerful position in this world because of what America is, the superpower. Okay? So yeah, he can do that. And that's why they're going to him. That's why the Qataris are pushing him. Please, Mr. President, if you want to do a deal with that, this is what you have to do. And he's inherently against that because he's a patriot. His whole campaign is America first, nationalism. He talks about the Iranian people, the pride of the Iranian people. They're strong and brave and blah, blah, blah people. He distinguishes them from the jihadist regime. So we can see this is completely against what he stands for. And they're still coming to him because he's the only person that would have the power to advance their jihadist, dirty, manipulative agenda. So that's why they're pushing him for it. And Patrick understands that, and here's his answer.
What authority does Trump have to change the Gulf, the Persian Gulf? What authority does he have? Meaning, okay, we can change the Gulf of Mexico.
What authority does the president have?
Meaning that's not his side of the world. What authority does he have to do that?
It's called the biggest megaphone ever in the history of mankind. Ever. It's the biggest megaphone. And by the way, if he says the Arabian Gulf, guess how many people around that area would actually support that? If he says that and he goes being aggressive with it, let me tell you, there's a lot of people that will start calling that themselves. What did he say to Associated Press? If you stop calling the Gulf of America, I'm going to stop funding you.
Yep. Yeah.
If you the amount of power this man has.
So you can see, as an American, and even though he says he wasn't born here, he thinks like an American. He can understand what America stands for. He can understand the power of Donald Trump saying this is going to be the Gulf of America. And whoop, go on Google right now. What does it say? Gulf of America. He doesn't own Google, but Google understands in order to, have their business and have their advantages and everything that they're doing, they better comply with that. And that's the power of the President of the United States. That's why the jihadists are afraid of him. That's why they're manipulating him or trying to manipulate him through his own people, through his own camp, through his own advisors around him. Not all of them. There are some people who are very immune and some people who are so obvious, and we will talk about that in a different video. But what I wanted to say, you can't just take the word of anybody who says they're Iranian or has an Iranian name, because not every Iranian is, again, immune to the brainwashing. So see what Patrick thinks is the reason.
But what is the president doing? He is using this as a method of negotiation to get under the skin of Iran. Mm-hmm. That's what he's doing. And he's sitting there saying, who's going to do a better deal with me? If Saudi's going to put 1.3 trillion, 600 billion, you're going to do all that stuff to America, and Iran's going to look and, treat us the way they are, guess what, Iran? I'm going to get under your skin. That's what he's doing. And I understand his methodology of what he's doing. I truly do. I get what he's doing.
He thinks the Islamic regime would be against renaming the Persian Gulf the Arabic Gulf. So this is why I really have to make a video about the Islamic regime. These are Arabs, Patrick. They are descendants of Muhammad, of Ali. Okay, they're descendants of these Pan-Arab Islamists. They have Arabized our country. They have Arabized our culture. They have Arabized our people. You yourself talked about that, the propaganda. But you think this is Iranian propaganda. They want to erase everything Iranian. That's why they go after every Iranian people, be it the Kurds, be it the Lurs, be it the Persians, be it the Baluch, be it anybody, like all of our people. Single them out, isolate them, destroy them. Because they're not Arab, not that specific kind of Arab. Even our Arabs, they go after. We have Khuzestan and they try to kill them because they're not Pan-Arab Islamists. They're not working together with them. They're against them. So that's what you have to understand. The Islamic regime doesn't give a shit about Persian identity, Iranian identity. The Islamic regime itself, when it came into power in 1979 through a coup, tried to rename the Persian Gulf. They wanted to rename it the Islamic Gulf, just like they renamed Iran the Islamic Republic, because they're not Iranian, they're not Persian, they're Islamists. And a lot of people don't know that. They're selling our oil for cheap. They're exploiting our country, our resources. They're selling our islands. They're selling our artifacts. They're selling our culture. They're selling everything. And every 6 hours, they're killing an Iranian that knew who he was, that was fighting them. So there's a massacre going on by these Arab Islamists called the Islamic regime that are occupying Iran and killing Iranians. So do you think for a second that they would care whether it's called Persian Gulf or Arabian Gulf? They are the ones that would replace it with Arabian Gulf. They are the ones that replaced the name of Iran with Islamic Republic, and then they added of Iran. Shit, do we have to name it Iran? Yeah, okay. Of Iran. Islamic Republic. That's what they are. Islamists, not Iranians. So that, when you don't understand that, it shows the power of, again, patriotism, nationalism, your identity and your history versus those that were gullible to propaganda by the communists and by the enemies of Iran. And as he says, like his own mother was one of the people being part or being manipulated into overthrowing the Iranian government and replacing it with Arab Islamists. So of course, especially when you're in that family, when you're influenced, just like the people on our college campuses right now, when you're influenced by this day in, day out, and told lies and can't see anything for what it is, of course you think that way. Of course you will help enemies to topple your own government. That's what they do. That's what they've done in 1979. That's what they're doing on our college campuses right now, destroying us and having our people do it. Our own people, our own students do it. And so he can't see that these are the enemies, and he can't see the rest of the enemies because he is asking the right question, right? Like he's thinking like, why would Donald Trump do that? Like what's his skin in the game? And that brings us back to he's not doing that. The Arab Islamists from Qatar are doing. So I think this video is long enough, and let me know in the comments if you like this style of just like rambling instead of like what I usually do, like well-crafted short videos for social media for short attention span people versus this like going into detail and explaining so people understand and see the bigger picture of what's going on. And yeah, discuss as you like in the comments, share, comment, like, and subscribe.